My son is 5 years old, and the other day I was trying to explain to him why he couldn't do something, and he just kept asking, why? Without really thinking about it, I just said, because I said so. I know, it's the classic parent move. I remember being a kid and my parents saying the same thing to me. As a child, that never made enough sense, but as a parent, I find myself reaching for it as easily as they had. It's really an appeal to authority. I'm the parent, but it's also an appeal to trust. Trust me. That's what we're really saying. But trust, particularly when we're suspicious of those in authority, can be hard to hold on to. When I ask my son to trust me, I do it because there's something I know that he doesn't yet understand, but it doesn't take much for that trust to slip into suspicion. I think the serpent knew exactly what he was doing when he planted the question, did God really say, in Eve's heart? Sure, Eve saw that the fruit of that forbidden tree looked good. There may have been some temptation just in the fruit's appearance, but the real temptation was the seed of doubt that the serpent's question planted into the garden of God's goodness. Suddenly, what God had said, the trust they had in his goodness, was in question. What was God keeping from them? Why had he forbidden some fruit and not others? What was God hiding? You won't die, the serpent replied to the woman. God knows that your eyes will be opened as soon as you eat it, and you will be like God. Sin always works like that. In the goodness of God's perfect creation, we get suspicious that we're missing out. God is somehow keeping us from something. We come to suspect that his authority is holding us back and not for our good. And so we reach. We reach for our own way, our own authority, our own control. We reach to find out, to discover, to claim life for ourselves. Have you ever considered all the good that God intended and that humanity sacrificed in that moment? And all it took to kick off that rebellion was a single interjection of distrust. Isn't that how it always goes? The moment we think we know better, everything is suddenly up for grabs. I've always been struck that the first acknowledged consequence of humanity's sin was that their eyes were opened and they realized that they were naked. Eve took some of the fruit and ate it. Then she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. At that moment, their eyes were opened, and they suddenly felt shame at their nakedness. Up to this point, neither Adam nor Eve had recognized their own nakedness. They were most likely focused on enjoying the perfection of creation, the garden, one another, and the company of God. But disobedience led them to seeing like they had never seen before. Acting as if they were the final judge of what was best for their life shifted their attention to themselves and left them feeling exposed and vulnerable. That realization collapsed their garden experience into conflict and chaos. And maybe worst of all, their shame led them to hide from God. Conflict and strife now poisoned what it meant to be in God's creation. Humanity became deeply broken. But God came looking for them. It is the foundational human story, our rebellion, our hiding, and God searching for us. I guess the question is this: why do we still find it so hard to trust God? Why are we so easily convinced that we know best, that we know what we need? Why are we still rebelling against God's purpose of creation? You know, the Bible is 66 books, and so far we are just 3 chapters into the first book. But this long, winding story has its ultimate promise right here in the beginning. While God acknowledges that this sin had now fundamentally altered the human experience, he promised that this was not the end. One day, a son of this woman would crush the head of that serpent. One day the goodness of the garden would be restored, and us with it.